This is the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast with your host, Kevin Murray.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. On this episode, we have a guest that has created a fantasy football resource that people just can't stop talking about. The website, the X account, it's absolutely fantastic and definitely something you want to check out. From Coach Speak Index, it's Greg Brainos. Welcome in.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. Been looking forward to this.
Absolutely. I first caught wind, several weeks ago of everything that's going on. It's hard to miss if you spend any time on X or Twitter. So I reached out to you a few weeks ago and was like, hey, let's get you on, because I love sharing resources. I love discovering resources and sharing resources with consumers out there. And this is something that people need, right? It brings just a whole different perspective on the game. It's something that a lot of people are aware of, the term coach speak. For you, like, how do you define what coach speak is?
Well, you kind of need to share the same definition as the fantasy community shares and everyone else shares, which is kind of a pejorative term whenever you hear someone say, oh, no, that's just coach speak. You can't believe that. But the way that we define it and put it into the Coach Speak Index database as far as actionable coach speak is anything that a coach would say that leads the public to believe it has a greater than 51% chance of happening, or greater than 50% chance of happening.
All right. And how would you describe what the Coach Speak Index is and what issues you're addressing with this content?
Yes, the Coach Speak Index is tracking all of the actionable coach speak. So we can basically decode it and translate whenever a coach says something. We can tell you exactly how reliable that piece of information is. And, that can help you act on it, whether it's betting on the NFL or setting your fantasy lineup or waiver wires, or when it's training camp, how high do I draft this guy? What kind of exposure do I want to this certain player?
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's so cool. Again, it's actionable advice. Plus, there's a little bit of humor in there. I love that. Obviously, it's like I said, it's been something that people have really enjoyed seeing burst onto the scene. And we'll get a little bit more into that. But let's learn a little bit more about you, your background. When did you become a big sports fan? I imagine that you're a sports fan diving into something like this.
I love sports. Growing up as a kid, I wasn't allowed to watch TV, so the only way I could consume sports was either listening on the radio or, reading the newspaper. I also collected sports cards as a kid, so those were kind of my three areas on how I could consume sports. Once I got to college, I have this like really crazy background, that informs the whole can't watch TV thing. And I kind of broke away from that when I went to NC State and, started living life, went to my first football game. And yeah, so college football was big for me. College basketball, really got into that. And but always loved the NBA and the NFL. And I mean, that just every year the love for the NFL has just gotten stronger and stronger, to the point now where I'm just consumed at all times by NFL and haven't even watched that much NBA this year.
So when did you find fantasy sports and fantasy football?
Fantasy football was, I want to say, around 2005, 2006. Started playing it, kind of seriously. Was in a league with a bunch of friends that I met through poker in college, and then we started playing in a couple big money leagues. And yeah, the train has never stopped.
I love it. So, do you remember, like, when you first discovered fantasy, some of the content that you would first use and find some of the people out there creating content?
I mean, back then there weren't a ton of people creating fantasy content. At least that was, widely available. So it was really just Matthew Berry at the beginning, the OG. And I believe the next person I got into was Evan Silva. Silva's top 150
Yeah,
has always been something that I look forward to on a yearly basis. And
very
yeah,
good.
just other podcasts like Fantasy Footballers, really fun. Underdog, tremendous content, on the scene now for the last couple years.
So you've been consuming that content for a little bit then, huh?
Yeah, a while.
Nice, nice. So what do you enjoy most about playing fantasy? I'm sure you got a primary home league that you have now or that you've had in the past.
I I think this or last year was the uh I had a home league I played in for a long time. But I was also playing in so many other leagues, FFPC, and it got to the point where setting lineups and doing waivers was 4 to 6 hours of my life every week. I was in that many leagues, and it got to the point where I decided I'm just going to do best ball, at least for the immediate future, especially with everything else going on in my life right now. And coach speaking next takes up so much time. I can't, I'm having to shave away hours here and there in my life. So yeah, I'm a best ball bro right now.
Nice, nice. Now you mentioned your backstory a little bit. Obviously, you didn't touch on kind of the details behind that, but you've also you've done screenwriting, you've done stand up comedy, you've worked with Yahoo Sportsbook. How have those experiences influenced where we're at today?
Oh man, I mean, well, it's led me to this point. First of all, right? Kind of butterfly effect. Started doing stand up in 2006. Started screenwriting in 2012, and yeah, just that's kind of honed um my humor, putting in that 10,000 hours. Obviously you have to just like naturally, I think, have a sense of humor for it to work. But and any stand up will tell you that, right off the bat, that Anthony Jeselnik didn't get to that point where he is right now immediately. You got to put in the hours. So that kind of sharpens your sense, and not just a sense of humor, but observation, things that you're looking for, which comes in very handy for Coach Speak Index when you're watching press conferences and picking up on things, and like knowing that this is going to play to a certain audience. And that's probably what's helped the most.
Nice. Now, it makes a lot of sense. Now, obviously, when it comes to Couch Speak Index, what inspired you to start doing that? Like, when did you get that idea, and then what kicked it off?
This was, I believe, 2019 was the first kind of initial seed of it. Playing in a bunch of leagues, with the waiver wires and whatnot. I told my co-manager, we should start tracking which of these coaches we can believe. And started with Kyle Shanahan. Like, we knew he was a pretty honest guy. We knew that we couldn't trust Zach Taylor. And that became even more evident in 2020 with the Joe Mixon situation, where, oh, he's day to day, and then he's missing weeks, and then he's out for the season. So I was just tired of getting rug pulled by these coaches, and that Joe Mixon situation was the kind of Jesse Pinkman. They can't keep getting away with this tipping point. And just thought something needs to be done to solve this problem. And then, okay, well, no one has done it. Why don't I do it? And what would go into that? And it didn't take long to realize that I had the benefit of hindsight. I can just go back. All these press conferences are on YouTube now. There's transcripts of all the press conferences. I'll just go back. I'll look at everything that they said. I'll log into a database. We'll see, at the end when everything's put in, how honest they are, or how misleading they are, and not just across the board. Because initially, I was expecting, a coach will just be honest across the board, or you can't trust them at all. And I found that pretty quickly to not really be the case. Zach Taylor, not at all trustworthy on injuries, but he's actually pretty trustworthy on player usage and workload coach speak. So that was a pretty big realization, um, when when I discovered that, and just made the coach speak index that much better, I think. And
So
and,
you've
and
been
so I broke everything up into four categories: depth chart, transactions,
yeah.
injuries, and player usage and workload.
So yeah, each coach has a profile on your website in those different categories, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And you've been compiling this data for a couple years before this account was created. When was the X Twitter X account created?
I locked it down in January. I just registered the name in January, but then I didn't actually launch it. Start doing anything with it until I launched the website, and that was in August. So about, I guess, 4 months ago.
It's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. So the website's awesome. It's cool. You have basically all the different coaches and each category, their rankings, right? So what is your process? Like, how do you judge the accuracy of the coach speak?
Um, how like right now, or I mean, I went back and I logged everything into the database, to build each coach's profile, and then each piece of coach speak that's in there, uh I have the result in the
Yep.
database, so I can go back and, when I need to cross reference, and of course, whether it ended up being true or whether it ended up being a lie, and then I have everything tallied up. And now it's not necessarily if, oh, if this coach has 50 pieces coach speak on usage, and um 25 of them are true, then he's 50%. It's not exactly like that. Every piece of coach speak is weighed differently,
Okay.
which usually comes into play more with injuries, but also a little bit with with usage and workload. But if a coach is saying, oh yeah, this guy is taking a huge leap this year, and he has just a nominally better year, then all right, it's not a lie, but this isn't exactly what we were promised. I'll weigh that a little bit differently than, if someone says, that a huge year is coming for a player, and the player has a huge year and takes this giant leap, then yeah, that's definitely weighed more heavily.
Nice. So you got a formula. You look at the past coach speak, measure it by the objective data from the stats and whatnot, and you come up with your scores. And then so now obviously we're dealing with now we're current, right? You got real time coach speak and press conferences happening daily and games playing every week. What's it like now, kind of doing it in real time and anticipating the results that are ahead of you?
Yeah, the process now is, just watching every single press conference, and logging any actionable information into the database and keeping an eye on that. Sometimes it's resolved within that week. Sometimes it's the coach saying, yeah, this guy's going to play this week, or Dan Campbell saying that, yeah, David Montgomery's going to get a ton of touches this week, and you can grade that immediately. But then sometimes it's, Dan Campbell saying Jameer Gibbs is going to get more touches. He's not necessarily saying for this game, just like, you're going to see Jameer Gibbs start to get more touches, and then that's something that I put in the database, and I just have pending, and I can grade it once the season is over.
Wow, it's such a fascinating thing. I mean, do you look at there's such nuance when it comes to how people speak and body language? Are you diving into all that kind of thing, all that kind
Oh
of stuff?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, it's so helpful for the database that these coaches like us have certain vocabulary sets and speech patterns that come out. You talk for hours every single week, for weeks out of the year, for years. I mean, these guys aren't mixing it up with the vocabulary. They're using the same, like, phrases and terms and ways of speaking. So that's extremely helpful to be able to cross-reference that with an exact phrase that they've used in the past, like Pete Carroll saying, "Oh yeah, this guy is coming off surgery. He's going to have no limitations this week." Well, he said that about Jackson Smith and Jigba, I believe, week 1. And looking at the database, I saw that he said that about Marshawn Lynch um, before, and Chris Carson, and those guys ended up having a snap share of in the 30% range. So yeah, the fact that they are using the same phrasing and verbiage um, can often be a huge help in kind of decoding what they're saying.
That's incredible. The whole thing is fascinating to me. Do you find that the coaches speak differently about or certain coaches speak differently about veterans versus rookies? I mean, have you got into that kind of thing?
Uh, yeah, it's you see guys like D'Amico Ryans this year talking about John Mechie and Tank Dell, and it's definitely harder with the first year coach. When you don't have much data on them, but you will see that a lot of, yeah, coaches are sometimes just trying to inspire confidence in a guy like Brandon Staley with Quentin Johnston, and all these drops that he's having, and people are asking Staley, are you going to stick with Quentin Johnston? Like, what's going on? Is there any hope here? And Staley saying, I've told you guys all year, like he's going to be fine. He's going to work through it. You know, and he's gotten pretty testy about it when they ask him about Johnston.
That's fun. I mean, the whole thing is fascinating. What suspicions have you confirmed when you created this database?
Kyle Shanahan being just brutally honest. Um, I mean, this guy is just such a straight shooter. Kind of similar to Dan Campbell, and in the way that they talk about players. They're Todd Bowles is in that same boat. Actually, he might be even more brutal. Like he doesn't hold any punches back when someone
Yeah.
asks him about a player's performance. Is like, yeah, he's got to do much better. And then Dan Campbell earlier this year when they acquired Denzel Mims, and reporters asked him, how's Denzel Mims doing? What's going on with him? And Campbell said, he's in the room. That's all I can tell you. And then they cut him like a day or two later. Um, so yeah, those guys were super interesting. I was expecting Pete Carroll to be, completely unreliable, like everyone had thought. Kind of this myth that's been um, you know, just grown stronger every year of, oh, you can
Sure.
never trust Pete Carroll. And he was actually the first one that I worked on for the database, and I found that to not be the case exactly. His coach speak is extremely nuanced. I found that you can trust him when he speaks about injuries during training camp, but then once you get into the season, you can't trust him on injury coach speak. And then that flips for player usage and workload when he's talking about how a guy's going to do for the season during training camp. Um, you can trust them, but when it's in season, you can't. Or sorry, you can't trust them during training camp. During the season, you can usually trust what he says about player usage.
Okay.
And then he also has like certain phrasing that he uses, like when he said, and I'm just going to give away the entire Pete Carroll formula right here. In season, when he says player has a good chance of suiting up, they're less than 50% to suit up. When he says they have a really good chance or great chance of suiting up, that guy usually plays. So just so interesting. I'm just always fascinated by his coach speak.
That's amazing, and it takes the dedication, like the amount that you must be dedicated to this to find all these little wrinkles in it is amazing. And it's also it makes sense why people are loving it so much. When you put out the coach speak and the quotes, and then you add a little bit of your insight as to what that might mean. It's a great tool and something that again I highly recommend people discover. What have you learned that has surprised you during this process?
Oh man. Um, I mean, I'd say the Pete Carroll thing is number one. Mike McCarthy's profile. I I mean, this was a guy who lied about watching all this Cowboys tape to get the job, and he is one of the most honest guys when it comes to coach speak. I was blown away when I was putting all this stuff into the database. It was just like true, 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 true. Like, does this guy ever lie, or is he a reincarnation of George Washington or something?
So now, are you surprised where this is taking, how this is taken off, and received such a great response in the industry?
Uh yeah, yeah, I am at least at this speed. I mean, from day one when I had the idea, I honestly thought, man, this is going to be such a game changer for fantasy and NFL betting. And then when I started building the database, I was like, this is even better than I thought it was going to be. But I expected it to take a while. I knew fantasy football players would really love this if they got their eyes on it. Which was the biggest hurdle that I saw.
Yeah.
And I actually expected the industry to be not as accepting, maybe, as sort of a like, who's this new guy trying to come into the space? Let's let's not let him in. But that I mean that couldn't have been further from the truth. The industry people have embraced it more than anyone, and with the retweets and quote tweets and people saying, "Hey, you need to check out the Coach Speak Index." Josh Norris was one of the first people to shout us out, and then Evan Silva and Matthew Berry, Field Yates. Like, it's been wild, man. And yeah, it's snowballing. 4 months in, we're a little over 17,000 followers, and got about 12 to 14,000 over the last month and a half. Yeah, it's hard to wrap my head around right now.
That's amazing, and I mean, the fantasy football community is amazing. Like, truly, the people in it, all throughout it, from top to bottom, from left to right. I mean, it's a great community. So I'm not surprised that it was embraced so well. But I can see, putting out something and not being really, I guess, as familiar with how things go on that front. I can see why that would be a surprise to you. But it's been cool to see for sure. Are you looking to, are you, I guess, what are you trying to do? Are you looking to create some collaborations with brands and companies? Where is this brand going?
I'm in talks with a few companies right now, exploring different avenues. There's always the acquisition uh, avenue. Just full time and doing the Coach Speak Index for a company. While I'm there for however long, and partnership is another option. So just trying to right now find what's going to be the best fit and what's going to be best for the brand. I don't want to rush anything. I'd rather not do like a temporary 1 year thing of like, oh, the Coach Speak Index is now at this site, and okay, well, next season now it's at another site. I
Yeah,
think stability for the brand is very important. um, and I'm in no huge rush right now. I'm doing all right. I'll be fine building this thing, and keep doing it, and the right fit will open up at some point. I'm not worried about that. All I'm really worried about right now is just making this thing better and better every day.
I love it. What roadblocks are in your way? I imagine that, I mean, you grind and grind and grind and probably solely grind and grind. Is this something that you can like teach to other people to help you when you establish a team? What roadblocks lie ahead?
Well, first I need to get a better setup here for for videos and that kind of content. Um, yeah, roadblocks. I mean, people have asked about doing an NBA Coach Speak Index in college football, Coach Speak Index. Obviously, I don't have the manpower, person power for that right now. I am doing it solo. I'm a very hands-on person. I could see working, with other people or a team, but yeah, like it's a blueprint I can explain to people. Not like anyone could do it, but well, a lot of people could do it. Um, but yeah, man, roadblocks. There are things that I don't want to say, like, because I don't want to really put it out there in the universe,
Sure,
and then it
sure.
happens. But if X went offline tomorrow, like, okay, what then? I'm not, where do we go from there? Because that's where most of the content is
Yeah.
right now. Yeah, I don't think about roadblocks as much as, okay, how am I going to make this better? I guess it staying the same uh would be a roadblock for me. Like I want to improve this, and I have a this blueprint of adding a couple more, which includes adding a couple more layers to this during the off season. Uh, that that's really going to supercharge us to the point where it's like, all right, this thing is unfair at this point. And one of my goals is cracking NFL draft props, which I think I have
Nice.
maybe a 25-30% chance of doing, adding these new layers in.
I love it.
So yeah, so it's not as much of like big roadblocks as um, you know potential challenges, and like there's no competition for this. If someone wants to build their own Coach Speak Index, like, all right, go ahead. I'll see you in a couple of years when you're done building your database.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the competition that I view is like where the Coach Speak Index is at right now. It's like, all right, let me let me improve on this.
I love it. I
But
mean, it's such a unique, piece of content and brand. Again, I think it's so cool to see something like this get infused into the fantasy football community. Speaking of the community, do you have any plans on attending any like community like industry events? Obviously, there's the Fantasy Football Expo that takes place in August in Canton, Ohio. You got the Fantasy Sports and Gaming Association, which has a conference in February in Vegas. Have you thought about, or are you aware of any of these events where you can get a little more, dialed into the community?
I'm aware of the Canton one. I thought about maybe going next year. I didn't know about the Vegas one, but it's pretty convenient because I live in Vegas. Um, so I could probably make that. I do think it's a little bit ironic that it's in Vegas when you can't play uh, DFS in the state of Nevada. I don't know why. I guess it's this evil that they've outlawed. You can hire a sex worker to fulfill your fantasies in Nevada as long as that fantasy isn't fantasy football, I guess.
Terrible. But yeah, I mean, it's Vegas is definitely a unique place. Do you enjoy living there? Are you happy being there?
Yeah, yeah, I like it. The heat can be a little bit intense in the summer, but it's cool to be able to just pop down to a casino and uh, make a bet, like a futures bet, because sometimes Bet MGM won't be offering anything for this certain category, but Caesars is, and well, maybe you'll get a better price down the street. So yeah, it's cool. A lot of good food here. Pretty walkable. I live right off the strip, so I can just walk down, get some decent food, and watch the fountains in action.
There you go. I love it. So how much has your experience with gathering this database affected your, playing DFS or playing DFS or best ball or fantasy?
Um, well, I'm not allowed to play DFS in
If you
Nevada,
go to a
unfortunately.
different state. Yeah, if you
Yeah,
go to a
yeah,
different
yeah.
state.
I mean, it's helping a ton. I can't wait until next training camp when when everything is like fully in place and I'm not in kind of catch up mode and building a website and all that stuff. And where I can just tackle the coach speak on a daily basis and do drafts, which for underdog I maxed out the best ball mania 4, but I had to drive down to the California border
Yeah.
once a week to roll off like 9 drafts in a row and then drive back to Vegas. But yeah, I mean, I think it's going to help a ton, and I'm just so excited for where the Coach Speak Index will be at that time, and I think it's going to be even more powerful than it is now.
I love it. I'm excited. The industry's excited. So keep doing the great work. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to share before we close things out?
Um, no, I don't think so. Check me out on Twitter, on X at Coach Speak Index. You can check out my personal account at Greg Brainos. I have a link to my portfolio, which includes some of my writing, spec scripts that I wrote for New Girl, Workaholics, and Animals. And it has some of the ideas that I've pitched to Yahoo Sportsbook, Yahoo Sports when I was there. That's like part of the reason that they brought me on was for my ideas. And yeah, I got some really fun ones. And if you're a company that's in search of creative, unique ideas, you know where to find me.
There you go. It's Greg Brainos. Happy to have you on again. It was fun to get this to happen, and I'm rooting for you. Hopefully everything works out well. Definitely encourage you to get to the expo in August. It's a great event. So many people there. And I'll get you some more information about that Fantasy Sports and Gaming Association conference, because that happens like I think the Tuesday and Wednesday after the Super Bowl. So if you're in Vegas for the Super Bowl, there's a ton of people there that would, I'm sure, love to meet you and meet you in person and get to know you better.
Yeah, man, sounds great. Thanks for
Sounds
having me.
great. Thanks again for coming on. Appreciate you, and best of luck moving forward. Can't wait to see what's next.
Me too. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. Until next time, be sure to follow and subscribe to all of FFU's social media accounts for daily content.